This is the Ultimate Weapon Tournament through ages. I'm going to be comparing weapons from the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age, and try to figure out which one is the best using the following system. Oops, there we go. So I'm dividing them between melee, ranged, and siege weapons. So we have melee here. And then I'm also dividing the melee into slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing. So do you cut them, do you hit them, or do you stab them? Also, I'm scoring it on an out of 10 scale for strength, power, resistance, breaking, range, the length you can attack from, style, how it was used, and sharpness, how sharp it is. Then we move on to the long range weapons, where it's power, how hard to hit, range, the accuracy, the distance you can consistently hit targets at, firing speed, the time needed to reload and fire, and projectile, probably the projectile. And siege weapons, we have the same accuracy to the rate of fire, reload time. We have devastation, how much damage it deals, and area of effect, what area it deals that damage in. So we're starting with the Stone Age. So we will be doing these Stone Age weapons. Starting with the rock. So the name is going to be up here. Above that, we have if it's melee, siege, or long range, and if it's bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. These are all the bars. If it's colored, it means it is a score. This is the overall score, extra bullet points, and there's a picture. So the rock was used to bash people and was potentially the first weapon made by man, score 3. Then we move on to the tied stone with a score of 4. It was a rock with a rope tied around it. Random bludgeoning. Then they figured instead of just throwing each stone individually, let's make something, put stones in and throw them one at a time and be able to reload. Score of 6. Then the early spear, they got a big stick and put a sharp rock on the front. Score of 12 that was really long, which was very good at that time. Then the early javelin, someone came up with the idea to throw a spear, and score of 7. Then to attempt to throw their javelin farther, they created the throwing stick, so they would put the javelin here and throw it. Then we move on to bow and arrow. It was actually originally created to shoot javelins farther, and it became a very iconic weapon. It was actually developed in the Stone Age and scored 14. Then the chip flint axe. This one is really cool. It was made by, so they would take a branch on a living tree, and they would poke a sharp rock through it, and they would let the tree heal around the rock, and it would secure it in. Then they would cut it off, so it could be thrown or attacked. So 12 in melee, 9 in range. And it almost brings to mind if anyone see if Infinity War where Groot grabs Stormbreaker and then they use his arm. Then the Filipino blowgun, it was a blowgun, some score of 10. Some of the darts were poisonous, like plants. Next, the Australian boomerang. It was mainly used to hunt, not on people. Score of 7, range bludgeoning. And now for the winners with the Stone Age, we have for melee a tie between the spear and the axe. And in a tie, I look at other uses for the weapon. So in this case, the axe wins because its ability to be thrown and cut down trees to potentially make new weapons. Then for range, the bow is the winner. Had a score of 14 and was used as the dominant range weapon pretty much until the invention of guns and baby craft. Now we're on to the Bronze Age. So we were doing these Bronze Age weapons, starting with the copper axe. It was a newer iteration of the axe. It wasn't used for throwing as much as the original though. Score of 11. And then someone invented bronze, which allowed them to make swords, which was something they couldn't do with previous metals. And these were really effective. Score of 16. Then they experimented with maces because they could hit non-lethally and was good against armor. Score of 9, melee bludgeoning. Then there was the Aztec composite bow. Score of 16. So what they did was they took the bow and they added curves and stuff so it could have the same and even more force applied to it on a smaller, like the bow was smaller, but they're shoot farther. Next, the Egyptian sword. Egypt's take on the bronze sword, a bit shorter than the other one, score 15. And the Babylonian battering spear. This one's really cool. It's the first siege weapon on this list. And it's essentially a giant spear with wheels that they would rail at gates. Score of 7. And now for the winners, we have the bronze sword here. It won over the Egyptian bronze sword because of its length. Then for range, we have the Aztec composite bow, because it was the only range on this list, or this section. And for siege, Babylonian battering spear for the same reason. Next we move on to the Iron Age. So we'll do these Iron Age weapons. Oh, that was odd. Starting with the Greek sword. It was a score of 17.
Do you have to go back? Do you have a?
No, I don't. It just did a weird translation. The score of 17. It was made of iron, which was a new resource that was stronger than bronze. So it increased in strength. Then the Greek javelin, they kind of combined the javelin into spear, so with something that can be stabbed or thrown. 13 in melee and 9 in range. Then the Roman sword, it was a clone of the Greek sword made in Rome. Everything was the same. Then the Ongar. Now, this was an early catapult, and it was actually named the Ongar because when it launched, it would kick up a big cloud of dust behind it. And this was actually, Ongar was actually the Greek word for fart. Then we move on to the ballistae. It was a giant crossbow, and with one score of 11. And we have the winners of this age. We have both of our iron swords doing exactly the same. I thought I fixed that. So for melee, the winner was the iron sword, because they were both the same. There's no point distinguishing them. And in range, the Greek javelin, the only range on this list. And out of these two, it was the ballistae, because it could launch farther and heavier things. So for the overall winners, oops, apparently if you hold down, it actually goes a few slides ahead. My bad. So we have the iron sword, still no need to compare the two, the Aztec composite bow, and the ballistae. I would just like to bring up that these scores don't actually compare to each other. I'm not saying the iron sword was better than the ballistae. They each can develop their own value within their respective category. And I focused on one primary source for this. If there were anything, that is why. Any questions?